Welcome to Dream Loudly, an I'm Possible original show sponsored by the Dream Loudly Foundation. And today we have a special guest, Zvezda Liluashvili.
Spot on.
Spot on. I've gotten great at that one. Zvezda is our European director. I'm going to let Zvezda tell his story a little bit, but in this episode, this is going to be really the Euro edition. We're going to be discussing European basketball. We're going to be discussing skills and training. And so Zvezda's a perfect guest for that. And of course, as you hear him, you'll understand why. So Zvezda, really quickly, just go ahead and tell your I'm Possible story just a little bit.
So first of all, I started with Micah about 10 and a half years ago. And the main reason I came to States, that was skill work. So 10 and a half years ago, I did my research. Obviously, there was nothing skill-wise in Europe. And at the level I was playing, I had to do something skill-wise so I can keep progressing.
And we're going to get into that, but he said, obviously, there's nothing skill-wise in Europe, and that's not obvious to a lot of people. And so we're going to go into that. But also, where are you from? You came to the States from where?
I came from the country of Georgia, which is eastern part of Europe. And again, I mean, I always had a dream to play college basketball, which I did, and we'll go into that if we need to. But again, I came to Micah to train skill-wise 10 and a half years ago, and since then I've been around all the time. Before I stepped into the actual training side of it, I was a player. So, and I'm glad I did it because, again, it opened up a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, and when Zvezda came over, I still remember when it was, when he came over to train. I don't know, was it just a week to start, 2 weeks?
It was 2 weeks.
So he did our 2-week custom training program, and just the main thing about Zvezda right from the get-go is that he just worked extremely hard. So that was the thing that you had going for you. You came over raw. Yep. You could tell that you had some game. You had a good feel for basketball. You had good basketball IQ, but just really raw in terms of where your skill sets were. Mm-hmm. So we went through your footwork and your shooting and your finishing and just put you through the whole thing. Really quickly, just go over, at that age, what was that experience like for you? What was the shock factor when you first kind of came across skill?
So even when I look at the videos now, it just looks funny the way I was moving. But, I mean, as a player, I didn't really see it because I was a good player. If I wanted to, I could put the ball in the basket. Obviously, it was different factors with it. But when I started and I came here, footwork, ball handling, the stuff I did, I have not really experienced that before. So it kind of put me in shock of how much room I had to improve. There was so much room, skill-wise, obviously, and basketball-wise also, because you're constantly learning. But I was playing at different ages, like under 16, under 18, under 20 in Europe. I represented my country, played at different levels, different countries for European Championship at those ages, and I was playing professional as well. But the fact that my skill set was not there, and obviously you got me exposed to that, it completely changed my mindset, kind of how I wanted to approach things. So that was the biggest eye-opening thing for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of things that people go through, especially European players, is they don't really get exposed to skills. They don't really get exposed to training. And so they come over here and just flat out get exposed to what they don't know about themselves. And we always tell our players, we're going to find out how bad at basketball you are. And so that was your first really exposure of finding out how bad you were at the game from a skill perspective. And so obviously you already had success in terms of playing for your national team. Now you wanted to turn that into playing college basketball in the States. And so we got out to training right away. Now, whenever we're talking about this topic, what I really want to kind of get into on this is why we have said that multiple times now, that there's really not skill training in Europe. And I'm sure you'll have plenty to say on this topic as a European player. But that shocks a lot of people when we say that, because we've obviously seen international players have success in the NBA. But without going there, without taking away from European players, what I want people to understand is that training isn't necessarily there in Europe. What they do have is a good system. And so do you want to just kind of jump into that just a little bit? What is your perspective on the state of training in Europe, and what do you like about how Europe is structured?
So what I like about Europe is that they don't really, especially as a kid, if you're a successful player, and they don't really put you in the box. They don't give you no role. So it's my game was mid-range. So I was never told, do not shoot a mid-range shot. until I came to play college in America, right? So I guess that was kind of like success from my part in Europe, that they gave me much freedom. Like I could kind of I can score from any level, right? Mid-range, three-pointer, layup, right? That opens up my game. So, I mean, but again, talking to the skill side of it, there's so much you can improve on those aspects, like at the different levels, right? But the biggest thing, I still think that in Europe, you have much more freedom, and I know you will talk about that stuff too. You have so much freedom as a player to kind of like get exposure, like to what you can do, compared to like basketball here. When I played at college, I was supposed to only shoot threes and go for layup. So which is a little different, and it kind of like plays with your mind. So that was the thing.
Yeah, and that's really, to me, the big thing about European basketball is players understand how to play with freedom. They're allowed to play with freedom. I think international players have the luxury of coaches saying, you're going to have to learn everything. They're not necessarily teaching them how to shoot. So when they talk about them being so skilled and so fundamental, trust me, it's not that they're actually teaching skills and fundamentals, but what they are allowing players to do is they're just allowing them to find their own identity, which we talk about a lot. I always say that our system fits Europe the best because we don't train in any boxes. And European players have the mindset, and coaches have the mindset of not putting players in boxes. And those two things go together wonderfully. Where in the U.S., our biggest flaw is that we tend to box players up, roll players up. I don't know if European FIBA basketball is getting to the analytics part of this, but my sense is not to the extent the NBA has, where even our NBA players are being boxed up to saying only threes and layups and no mid-ranges at times. But that's the main thing that, from all the players who travel over from Europe, players are constantly telling us there is no skill training. When I have gone to Europe to run camps and clinics, I quickly realized there is no skill training. It's all team practices where there's huge lines, working on plays, working on X's and O's, and letting players just play and find their identity. So that has been a winning recipe to some extent because players are able to be free, find out who they are, and find success. But if you think it's due to the training, you'd be really, really disappointed if you ever went to Europe for training. Yep. You're just not going to find it. So when you what was the most training that you did? What did training look like so people can have an understanding of that?
Well, the funny part is I used to make my own trainings. I used to go out, do my research, and obviously before I came here for skills, YouTube, like make a schedule, right? So you kind of do your own thing because there is no specific person you can go to and tell them like I want to train skills. There is training, which is called skills training, and we get that a lot. People do game enhancement stuff, and they call it skill enhancement. But there's no details in it, how your body moves. When you do those 2 dribble pull-ups, inside step, shoulder, all that dribble step timing, right? So those details are not present.
The details that are present would be go to that spot and shoot.
Take a shot, yep.
Stop, but I don't know if the type of stop is emphasized. Mm-hmm. And even if it is, once you get to the game, they really don't care.
Yep.
So even if they're teaching a 1-2 or a jump stop, if a coach, is really kind of had that be in their system, because there are some stubborn coaches in Europe where they're like, if you talk to them about their belief system, they're going to be all about a certain footwork. But they also just let players stop.
Yep.
And so it's not nearly as controlled as it would be here. And so your amount of training would be, all right, go to that spot and shoot.
Exactly. So
that's pretty spot on so far. Mm-hmm. And then, what are the opportunities for training out there?
So as of right now, I mean, we see it from here because I don't constantly go there like I used to. But the thing is, like, they try to pick things up as of right now, which, I mean, some people do take stuff from us and we don't get credit for that. We don't have to call them out. But there's people there who try to bring stuff on the table where I guess they do research through us. They look at us. They try to copy those things. But as of right now, I don't really see like a huge like skill training world that you can just go there. I'll be like, I'm gonna go do a skills training and dedicate that to that. So I don't really see that as of right now.
And to me, when I look at the world of opportunity, So the U.S. has the stubbornness side of the coaches controlling players and really, in my opinion, limiting what they're capable of.
Yep.
So the best players are here, but our best players are much more controlled. And then the ones who aren't controllable end up rising to the top. But you still have, 8th, 9th men in the NBA who just lose their identity because of how much they are controlled. And then in Europe, you have just freedom, the ability to decide who you are, and they're missing the training piece. And so we have more skills in our U.S. players, but we have more freedom in the European players. And here's the thing. If I had to pick a recipe or pick who I'd rather be right now, I'd rather be the European player.
Yep.
Because when our training gets to Europe at the type of level that we have seen in the U.S., with the freedom they're allowed to play in, then people got to be really, really scared.
Definitely.
So the European game is catching up on the training side and will catch up on the training side with the influx of training that's happening. And if you have that recipe with the type of freedom that they allow players to play with out there, it's going to be scary for the rest of the world.
Definitely.
The U.S. has to wake up on this one, because if the coaches keep controlling players like this, we have the training, but then the training kind of gets snuffed out by the time they get to certain levels. That's when the European game, I think, is really going to hit a whole different level compared to the U.S.
Yep.
And so one of the reasons why we're talking about this also is that Zvezda is our European director. So to kind of give an idea of his role, so he started training with us as a player.
As a player, yeah.
Went through the early training stages, ended up playing college in the U.S., went through those coaches who controlled everything he did, experienced what U.S. is really like in terms of that, and compared that to what it's like to play for your Georgian national team, where you could do, what you needed to and play towards your game. But after he was done playing, was easy to flow right into training. He's been at our world headquarters now for 4 years.
3 years.
3 years.
About to start.
Going on his 4th, and is now one of the best skill enhancement trainers in the world. We're happy to have him here at our world headquarters in Michigan. And now we're preparing for what we're going to be doing in Europe, which is still a lot in the works, but Zvezda is going to be a huge part of our European movement and really establishing our training in a greater way in Europe. So, but when you look at the type of skill training that we're going to bring there, what would you say is, what are we going to do for the European player?
So I'll speak from my experience, because obviously, just like I mentioned, it was eye-opening when I did stuff with you. What I mean by that, I learned how to train myself better, so I didn't have to see you every day.
Right.
I came here annual basis, 2 times a year, right? So it was just more of a knowing how to train myself, kind of having a more understanding how skill world works, so we don't have to see each other every day. So, and going back to the perspective, Europe has a huge perspective of where the kids are and how hungry they are to because everybody's dream is to play in America. Everybody's dream is NBA, right? And they are willing to, again, take those skills, whatever it takes, try to learn how to train themselves so they can improve their game, right? So there's a huge perspective for that. If the kids figure out how to absorb those skills, we will give it to them. Again, just like you mentioned, it's gonna be a game changer.
Yeah, and the mentality out there is what I love.
Yep.
The players just have a different mentality, and it's they have a belief system that, number one, they can do it because they've seen others do it, and so they just go through the clubs, go through the academies, and just keep staying with the game until they have the opportunity to come over and play college. And so there's just a good recipe, a good system, a good structure in place for players to find success. And that's really the strength of what the European model has. And then now, as we continue to bring skill training to them, it's going to open up all kinds of opportunities. But I want to speak to what you just said. So the Zvezda recipe is the same that we have for all of our European players, especially because we have players from all over the world who travel in to train with us once or twice a year. And in that time, we basically break down their game, show them all their weaknesses, work on new skills, and send them home. They don't have the opportunity to be here all the time.
Yep.
And we have seen amazing results for those players because now we've taught them how to train. They train on their own, and then we see them once or twice a year. And I think a lot of people don't understand the power of what we just said, because they think that training has to be a relationship. They think that training has to be a full-time gig. You're always seeing the same people. And people who have worked with us, we equip them to train themselves. So I want to swing back to that really quickly. Talk about how you were able to do that as a player. You came in, you trained with us. Now you're away from us for 340 days,
Yep.
right? So what is that process like, and what do players have to be ready for?
So the way I look at it is you get exposed to so many new things. There's no way you need to see someone every day to get better in that. Since I know I gotta work on my footwork, specific footwork I get, my ball handling, right? So I kind of have an idea what I have to stress before I see you, right? And plus, we do a great job of right now and back in the day, because I had a contact with you, so I could always reach out to you if I had an idea, if I had a question or whatever, based on training. But our online system helps kids a lot too. So again, you know what you gotta work on. Take your time, make a schedule, just like you always tell players. Like, know what you gotta work on so you can make a plan, so you can just follow it, right? So I think that was the biggest part for me, because I constantly try to, again, expose myself to new things, so I can keep working on new things, so I don't have to like see you every day for that.
Right, and our app has come a long way since then, but at the same time, we still had it. So there was our skills, our drills, and everything built into the app. So the recipe was the same. You came in and trained. We give you things while you're here, send you home. Now you have access to the app the rest of the year. How much did you rely on that app in the time that you trained on your own?
It's like a homework. Like you do homework at school, you learn new things, right? So if I know I'm struggling with something, I would spend like 15, 20 minutes on that. And the app is organized so well and so easy to use. All I had to do is mark what I need to do, right? So just make 4 or 5 things a week that I can just, again, work on that, spend 15, 20 minutes. And it does not take me like 3 hours a day. It takes 20 minutes, right? And I mean, that was a game changer, and that was so smooth transition for me to like kind of like not have to see you every day. So I can just like come in annually right before season, 2 weeks, whatever that was. And if I had a chance, I could make another trip, right? Just like I did before. But you really have to be invested in how good you want to be skill-wise and what are you looking at ahead of time, so you can actually like know how to make a plan and how to follow those things. And we provide those things. App is the easiest way to do that, right? So 15, 20 minutes a thing, depending how well you pick it up. That's how I did it. So it helped me a lot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when we talk about this, people think that in order for you to travel around the country, you have to be in a situation where, or around the world, you have to be a multi-million-dollar situation where you just have money just flowing everywhere. But there's so much sacrifice that players are able to make. And if you really look at how much people spend on camps and clinics throughout the year, what a lot of our European players do, because we don't have a whole lot of just, wealthy Europeans that come travel in, but we do have a lot of people who make sacrifices because the flight's going to cost them a certain amount, and obviously they pay for training. Sometimes their parents will come as well if they don't stay in our guest house, and they'll also have to get a hotel, and they just sacrifice some of those other things in order to train. But when you're in a situation where you just have to make it work, you do things that you need to do in order to be successful. But the coolest thing about Zvezda and his journey is that he worked on the app so well in between our workouts that we already knew he was going to be a great trainer. He was able to be successful as a player because he took what we did and did it on his own. He kept following our app for multiple years, and when all is said and done, he knew our system like the back of his hand. Then as he went through our trainer university and certification program, it just flowed, and he's been one of the best in the game since. So keep an eye out on Zvezda, our European director. We're going to talk more about this topic. We kind of just want to softly break into the idea that Europeans don't have skill training on lock. They're really relying a lot on what we've been building over the years. But if the U.S. doesn't look out, European players are going to get even more dangerous because skill training is coming.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And it's going to hit them hard when it does. Now, real quickly before we end this episode, I just want you to tell everyone, just so they know a little bit, of who are some of your favorite international European players that you've worked with.
As of right now that I'm having a player, I would say Sandro Mamukilashvili is the he plays in NBA obviously, but he's one of the most talented guys I would say that he's in the league, but he's a European prospect. But he's so good offensively. He's super skilled. So I think he's a really good player that can obviously like make change and make big moves in the league. But obviously we have players like Toko, like dominates EuroLeague, right? So you worked with him. So we constantly again have a relationship with him. So
You've worked with him.
Yeah.
Right, so that's the coolest aspect of it is we both work with these guys, which is great.
And I've been with him as a player too, so that was a great experience because I actually trained in the same group with him from a player side. So it was super fun.
Awesome. Yeah, and you'll see quite a bit of what we're going to be doing in Europe as time goes on. But for now, we'll just leave you hanging on that. Thank you for joining us on our Euro edition, part 1 of the Dream Loudly show.